Hi, I'm Ben Kader from Bull by the Horns, and welcome to this video for the Raging Bull Facebook group. I wanted to start by thanking everybody for participating and engaging within this group. As mentioned in the last video, the whole purpose of this group was to create an environment where like-minded people could help support each other and lift each other to a higher standard. So I'm so grateful for the level of interaction that we've seen so far. Thank you once again. Now I wanted to start this video by referring to some feedback that I received from a friend of mine who's a member of this group. His name is Louis Hanna, and he's a director at an accounting and auditing firm in Rosehill called Younis Co. Now Louis was referring to part of the last video where I talked about setting goals that were achievable, and the best way to figure that out was to look at has someone else achieved that. Louis raised a very valid point. Louis spoke about us using that as simply the measure of what's achievable. And if we were to simply accept that what other people had achieved was all that was possible, then we'd never see any innovation, we'd never see any new invention, we'd never see human progress. And Louis is 100% correct. You only have to look at guys like Thomas Edison, who are almost considered crazy for considering inventing the light bulb, and Christopher Columbus, who wanted to sail to the other side of the earth. And at the time, people thought he was actually sailing off the end of the earth. You have to look at examples like that to understand where Louis is coming from in terms of innovation, in terms of believing that something different is possible. So I thought it was such a valid point that it deserves some recognition, and it deserved me to talk about it in a video, because it is true. And often what will happen is that setting a goal that we know that has been achieved by somebody else can be the first step, especially if someone's sort of lacking self-confidence or doubting their own ability, believes that, yes, anything's possible, but not for me. Often we'll start with, okay, well, someone else has achieved it, so why don't we look at what they did and figure it out from there? And what usually happens is that as people work towards that goal, they start to form a new relationship with themselves, and start to believe in themselves, and then they dream big. So Louis from Younis Co, thank you once again. I suggest that an accounting and auditing firm that has a director with that sort of mindset is probably a good place to look at getting some accounting work done if anybody needs it. So there's a plug for Louis as well. Thanks very much. Now, what I wanted to talk about today was the type of questions that people ask themselves. Now, I found that monitoring the types of questions I ask myself has been the key to me being able to grow myself as quickly as possible, and also to help grow my clients as quickly as possible. So when I talk about the types of questions we ask ourselves, or I ask myself, what we're talking about is that little bit of self-talk that comes up when we're stepping outside our comfort zone. The types of things we start to say to ourselves, or the types of things we start to ask ourselves when we're reflecting on those challenging situations. Now, the exciting thing about the human brain is that we're like the most amazing supercomputer. We're designed so that if we ask ourselves a question, we will seek and find that answer. So if I'm in a challenging situation and I ask myself a question like, why does this always happen to me? What sort of answer do you think I'm going to get? Because my mind is going to seek it based on the terms with which I've asked the question. So why does this always happen to me? I'm going to come up with a list, a never-ending list, of all the reasons why this always happens to me. Because that's the type of question I've asked myself. So what I've done in terms of working with myself and working with my clients is I've started to notice these types of questions and started to ask myself different questions. So instead of why does this always happen to me, I started to ask myself questions like, what do I need to learn from this situation? Think about that question for a second. By the very nature of the question, it implies that there's something to learn. So straight away, instead of my focus being, why does this always happen to me, I'm starting to look for all the things that I might potentially need to learn from this situation. Now, do you think as I start to learn different things about this situation, the way I feel about it starts to change? Of course. The emotion starts to drop away. We start to gather new information. And then most importantly, we start to make new decisions from a different headspace about the same situation. There are a number of different questions you can start to ask yourself. You want to think about questions that are going to help you grow, that are going to help you get out of a challenging situation and start to achieve what you want. Another great question that I found is really effective is, what's really going on here? If you've ever been in an emotionally charged situation or a challenging situation one person's going off, the other person's going off, and you're sitting there and it sort of becomes like a little bit of a spiral. You just start to feed each other. Often in that situation, I'll ask myself the question, what's really going on here? Now, what does that question do? Well, instantly it implies that something else is going on there other than what I'm seeing. So what's really going on here? The minute you start to ask yourself a question like that, what happens is you start to look for the bit that you're missing. And it's almost like you're stepping completely out of the situation and out of the emotion to take a look at the situation. And what I've found with myself and most of my clients is that more often than not, when you ask yourself a question like that, you usually learn that what's happening has nothing to do with you. But as human beings, we tend to take things personally. And as we take things personally, all of a sudden the emotion increases, intelligence decreases, and we've got a highly emotive situation. And what's going on is that we're never really going to grow from this place. The minute we realise that what's going on has nothing to do with us, and it's usually about the other person, and we simply made the mistake of making it about us, we can let it go and come back into that environment from a neutral place. We're much more resourceful, we're able to resolve whatever it is that's going on. So, to reiterate, we're talking about the quality questions that we ask ourselves. Now, Tony Robbins once said that the quality of our life will be determined by the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves. So in short, we want to think about the types of questions that we're asking ourselves and start to get creative with the questions we ask ourselves and ask other people. Thanks very much for tuning in. I really appreciate everyone interacting in the group. Leave a comment on YouTube or a comment on Facebook. Let me know what you think of this. If there's anything else you'd like me to cover, please let me know. And I look forward to engaging with you and communicating with you in the future. Thanks very much. Have a great day. Bye.